Hello, Ben here from Supercoach Insider. You can find us on all the socials. It is SC Insider 100. What I'm going to do today is just give you a little bit of a rundown on my current team thoughts. It's not perfect. Obviously, we have the Amy series coming up, but I just wanted to give you a little bit of insight on what I'm thinking, particularly with Marshall and Bruce gone down. Also going to be releasing a little chat I had with George Supercoach, so also find him, George Supercoach, for all of his YouTube videos and obviously his Twitter, etc., that you can find him and talk to him there also. Now, interestingly enough, I had a little bit of a debate on this one. So I could afford Clayton Oliver and I could afford Harms from Melbourne, and it would cost me the same as Luke McDonald and Rowell. Now, that's when you look at that, that was the last two positions that I had, and I ended up going with the Luke McDonald and Rowell train. And the reason is we're going to start with the defense here first, and then I'll round out to that. Now, starting Luke McDonald, I think he is underrated. He's overpriced, but I'm going to pay for that. And again, he has averaged 120 over a 27-game period between 2018 and 2019. He has done it before, and I think that he's definitely someone who's going to be D1 for the whole year. So why not pay for it? Only goes under 100 16% of the time, and he goes 120 plus 44% of games, and you want to be on him more than you do not. And he's heavily owned, so you don't want everyone else to get off on a heater and then you be left behind. So start with Lloyd there. Zach Williams playing in that midfield. For me, his body's a concern. His time on ground and fitness are a concern. However, a defender playing midfield time, he scores highly as far as points per minute. So I think he's one that you can definitely sort of lock in into your defensive lines. Miller and Harms, I'm kind of tossing up between the two. I do like Harms, particularly averaged 95 as a midfielder in 2019. He's tipped to be going back into that midfield. Only 3% owned, which intrigues me because he's someone that could definitely get you off to a flyer, but it's hard to fit everyone in. So I've gone with Miller instead at this point. I've got 100,000 up my bank here just because in case people like Campbell or some other expensive rookies come in. Otherwise, Miller, I could definitely be someone different in my team. Jones, I think, is looking really good. Whether he starts or not is yet to be seen. Highmore, I think, is probably the lock of your D5 or D6. And Weir as well, mature age recruit. I think he's definitely valuable there. Now, Fife is the interesting one. If Flynn plays, you might want a loophole. So for me, I'm considering having this setup where I have a Fife on my team. Now, it's not Nathaniel Fife, but a Fife. I think it looks good just for the name. And I can then use him to swing in Laird. And I've got Laird in this midfield mix. And the reason is I don't trust too many midfielders this year. And even then, Lachie Neale had calf injuries for most of the preseason. But can I trust? I think he'll be top 8. Yes, I can. So I'm going to probably pay that money. Clayton Oliver is another consistent one who I think could be overpriced, but he is consistent. He's another one I would like to get into that mix. For me, Josh Kelly has had an uninterrupted preseason. He's been breaking PBs, etc. So I'm actually looking to try and start a fit player when I can. I think Josh Kelly has some real hurt factor about him. Again, low ownership, and I think he's one that could kickstart my year. Patrick Cripps, based on him going back to his previous strengths, building his body up, etc., to be nice and strong around the contest. That's what they want him for. He tried to lose weight, didn't work. They're going back to his strengths, and he's cheap. So for me, 523k, Patrick Cripps. Rowell's the interesting one. Now, I'm not sure why 50% have him, and I think they'll swing and they'll change their selection at some point. Now, I am on the fence about Rowell. I like him as a player. I think he's got a lot of value there. Clayton Oliver averaged 110 plus in his second year. If anyone else can do it, I think it's Rowell. He definitely has that position his own. He will play inside mid. It's no one else's. So that part you can kind of be short up on. For 495k, I don't think there's anyone else that's priced that amount that could go 110. And I honestly think Rowell could push close to the top 10 mids this year. He might fall short, yes, but he's someone that for that price, I don't think you could be too upset. And if everyone else is getting on, it's kind of one of those ones, do you want to be on the same board? If it takes off, then you're with everyone else and you kind of leave the other half of the competition. And if it doesn't, you're not actually that hurt. And you could have a lot worse in your side, I think, than Rowell. So he's kind of there at the moment for me. Heppel is the interesting one, playing halfback flank. He has kind of come in and out of my side a little bit. He did really well in the intra-club match. He looks impeded from no real restrictions on his ankle, his foot injury, etc. So he's looking pretty good. So I think Heppel's a good one for the halfback flank. So throw him in that midfield mix. Phillips, I'm waiting to see a little bit more about, but apparently, he was definitely rated as a junior behind Rowell and Anderson as a younger underager, and it's one of those people that time and space kind of stops for. So I'm waiting to see more on him. I still think if he is that caliber, I think he will play for 198k. I'm also, don't shoot me, looking at Dow. One of those pick with your head, not with your heart kind of moments, because I hate Paddy Dow. I think he's an overrated footballer, but research and the talks coming out are that he's bulked up, he's strong in the contest, and he's actually really impressing them out of stoppages. So Paddy Dow might actually come into my side at some point. Don't shoot me, but it's one of those things where the talk's good, he's cheap, had issues last year, so he's someone who could actually improve. I've got Valente, McRae, Eli Smith, and Downey. They're ones I'm just kind of looking at the moment. Valente, hopefully he plays. Eli Smith, I'm still big on, but how do you get into the Brisbane 22? Him and Cockatoo, they're a hard one, but they did sign him up for a contract extension. He has until the end of 22. He's impressed them, so I think he will get opportunity. Whether he keeps it, I'm not sure about. Downey, again, also impressing. Gawn and Grundy, I think you have to. And the reason that you might actually not even need a loophole option to start this year is Gawn's opponents are really weak in comparison to him. You could easily just lock the C on him and move on. You don't really need a captain's loophole early. And as you know, some people are going to get dropped at some point, so you're going to end up with a loophole down the track. So it's not a bad option to not even worry about a loophole to start. Flynn, tipped to now be the GWS number 1 ruck, which will be really interesting. I think kudos to him if he does get that job. 123k, money maker there. Now, Dangerfield's come into my side, and I just spoke with this with George on the podcast. Now, he's now not having any of that groin injury. He's now pain-free. Yes, he's had a restricted preseason. He's someone I think will play the first sort of, half a dozen rounds maybe in the forward line. He might actually get cheaper. He might get down to, 540s, etc. But you're going to want that money to go straight away if you want to get him when he drops. For me, I'm hoping he actually towels up a few teams like Adelaide early in round 1. Even if he plays a forward, mid-mix and more forward, I'm hoping he will kick some goals and still get a 120. So it's a funny one. Now, he's in my side because I can't be sure about Dunkley's role. I can't be, even though I like Dunkley and I want him in there. Still side bottom, I think will get cheaper. I think he's overpriced. Heaney, I think, is hit and miss. So where do you start? Unless you're just going to go all speculative and just spend all cheap players, I think you need to at least lock in someone who you think is going to be top 6 by the end of the year. And for me, that's Dangerfield. He's someone I can put in there without thinking too much about. This is where I've gone cheaper. Now, I've gone cheaper here because, as you can see, I've gone a little bit more expensive in the defensive line. I've still got 100k up my sleeve as well, so I could easily turn a Rowell into someone a little bit more expensive, or I might even mix things up a little bit more there. We will see. Maybe Phillips can become maybe a Haitley, because I definitely have money for that. Just if Phillips doesn't show up, I could go a Haitley for that. Caldwell for me, I think midfield role. Now I know his stats aren't great previously, but when I'm looking at role, I think it's his. I think Dylan Shield and everyone else is now pushing into different roles, different positions. Shield's now meant to be moving slightly more forward. Devon Smith is always going to go more forward. There's better midfielders out there than him. Do not pick him in any format. And Heppel obviously going to the back line. So I think it's, you're looking at McGrath. I think you're looking at Caldwell, and you're probably looking at, Shield, etc. to come in there for stints, Parrish, Langford, etc. But I think they've spoken about, they need him as that inside mid. Caldwell, I think they're going to give it to him. I think it's his to take, and someone who was only getting 65% time on ground at GWS, I think this is now his time to shine. He looks really good in the intra-club as well. So at this point, I'm actually just picking him at 350. Look, you could do worse things in the world, and if he doesn't do well, I'll sideways trade him to someone who is quite easily, or upgrade him, so no big deal there. Zeeble playing back flank. Good thing is, this is why I also got McDonald. Now, I want to touch on these two together. Zeeble was playing intercepting defender, looked really good. He was getting intercept marks, etc., running off and doing that kind of stuff there, which is good, because if he's playing that intercepting role, right? So he's going to lock down some defenders, float off a little bit, get some intercepting marks. He's not the extractor. He's not the rebounding player, which will be McDonald. McDonald's role for me now is even more secure than it was previously. And if he's the extractor with the man on the mark not being able to move as much, I think McDonald is now going to be able to hit more kicks in that corridor with his long boot as well. He's going to now get involved in more scoring chains. And I think this could be more like a Dunkley of 2019 where someone has a big back end to the year. They make that role their own. People sort of ignore it, less than 10% owned. I think McDonald's 7%. Dunkley, I think, was about 8% when I jumped on that. And I think it's one of those risks that you can afford to take because he has a high ceiling. I don't think he's going to drop too much cash if he doesn't start that well anyway. And I'm all for it. And if I could find a way in. Now, the only way I would change that is if Laird came into defensive line and then you don't have enough money because you've gone an Oliver or something. That's fair enough. Otherwise, I think it's just one of those ones where he could end up going 100 plus and easily and hurt you if you don't have him. So that's why I'm looking at McDonald. That's why I think Zeebel's also a good option. Behind the ball, linking up, getting more points. Not as much standard deviation of him being in the forward line, playing in defence as our forward in Supercoach. Next, I have Danaher and Impey. I think Impey's been impressing. They want his run and carry off the defensive line. Again, with the man on the mark, I think defenders are heavily underrated. I think they have a lot of scope to improve. Impey injury issues last year. He's now pushed back in defence. Looks really good. They want him to run and carry with it. I think him at 212K can probably hit around that 80 mark and make us some cash. Danaher is fit. He's been training all preseason. For me, yes, he's hit and miss. Yes, he could break down. But if he does, you get rid of him. You downgrade him, you upgrade him, you sideways to someone else you've missed. It's not a big deal. He is cheap enough to take the risk. It's not like you are banking on a Cunnington at 400 or a Taranto at 450. And if they go down, because these are guys you're wanting to be a keeper. Danaher's not a keeper. He's rookie priced. You want him to do a job and get out. His job is to make you at least 100K, hopefully 150 or more. You want him to get to around that 400 mark. One down, one up, premium, done. Easy. That's what we're looking for. And I think Danaher could definitely do that. He has a high ceiling. He has 2 good games in a row. Easily makes you cash. And you just wait for that one. Next, I have Rao from Adelaide and Laurie as well as the other options there. Looking at a few other players as well, it's going to come down to scoring potential and job security for me. So they're the interesting ones. Now, this whole team has changed a lot in the last 24 hours. It could change a lot again. I haven't had Rao on my side in a while, so I just wanted to give you a little update on what I'm looking at the moment. This is my side. Let us know in the comments section what you think. If you don't subscribe, please subscribe already. Give us some love. And again, for those draft players, comment. I'm going to leave the link in the description here as well. Check out the spreadsheet. It is absolutely ridiculous, loaded with everything you need, particularly for draft leagues. Or if you're new, it actually helps you distinguish between which premium to take. Should I take a Neil? Should I take an Oliver? Should I take a Kelly? And then you can actually look at injury, preseason, stats, positional talk, etc. And it helps you choose the difference between them. Again, have a look at that. Like us on all our socials. We're also on Facebook, on Twitter, SC Insider 100. Find us, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye.